Thanks, Ciancora. Yeah, I want to welcome these group of amendments too, and I wanted to welcome the earlier one about the time frame. I think that's really good, the month or the 4 weeks. So I do welcome and acknowledge the work that's been done, particularly again around the wording in Amendment 70. I think that it's really significant and it's really quite strong. And I suppose it shows what can be done and achieved when there is, like, not just consultation, but as Deputy Patrick has said, all the various discussions throughout the stages. So really I just want to welcome this group of amendments. And again, I would support what she says in relation to the mandatory information session, because I think we're down to kind of the one key sticking point now, but it is a very significant one. But if there was anything that could be done to look at that before the conclusion of the legislation. Thanks, Ciancora.
Sorry, Ciancora, just very technical amendments here. Technical amendment to section 38(6), as it refers erroneously to the agency instead of the authority, and this section empowers the Minister to issue directions to the authority, and therefore the wording needs to be amended so it is the authority rather than the agency who shall comply with that direction. And then the next 74 is a technical amendment to section 32(3)(c), as it refers erroneously to the authority instead of the agency, and this section relates to an application for tracing, and it is the agency who are the lead in tracing, and the applications will be made to them. Therefore, it should be them who specifies the manner of the application.
So is this technical amendment agreed?
Agreed.
69, already discussed. Minister, to move 69.
Moved.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. To move 70, Minister, please.
So moved.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
71, Minister, to move.
So moved.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
72, Minister, to move.
So moved.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
73 arises out of committee proceedings. Minister, to move and to advise us on this matter.
Yeah, that's so moved. I think this is another important amendment, and again, trying to I think this is maybe particularly significant in the cases where we've discussed earlier on, in terms of where we have a parent who doesn't reveal themselves and for whom there is a barrier to contact, any sort of contact, even if it's just information to an adopted person. So Amendment 73 seeks to expand the categories of person eligible to apply to the contact preference register to include the close friend of a parent who is now deceased. I'm happy to propose this in an additional category. I think this is a positive step which reflects and recognises the close relationships a parent may have had with a friend who may have valuable information for the relevant person, the adopted person, the person subject to an illegal birth registration who is seeking information. We know from our consultations with the Adoption Authority of Ireland, who currently facilitate the National Adoption Contact Preference Register and who will hold the new Contact Preference Register that's being established under this legislation, that friends of a parent may have important and meaningful information to share with relevant persons about a parent's time with their child or their life after an adoption took place, and this amendment will enable the sharing of this information. This amendment is also in response to amendments brought forward by several deputies at committee stage, where I agreed with the spirit of the amendments, and I indicated that I would seek to bring amendments to the same effect at the report stage. So this is a situation where a parent gave a child up for adoption, perhaps has discussed that with a friend, maybe has kept it confidential from the family, but has discussed it with one friend. That parent dies, doesn't have any contact with the adopted child. The adopted child is able to use this legislation now to get the birth cert, get all that information, but the colour, the real life experiences are denied because the parent is dead. This allows a friend of that parent to place their name on the contact preference register. So the adopted person can, if they search the contact preference register, they can find someone who knew their parents and is perhaps able to give them a description of who they were, of their lives, and maybe fill in some of that really important information that the birth cert, that the birth information, that all those things about the early life can't fill in. It'll never make up for the fact that the adopted person won't be able to meet their parents, but it can give them very, very substantial information through an engagement and perhaps build up a whole new relationship. So I know deputies have brought forward this as an idea. We've looked to see how it can be done, and we've made provision for it here. So I think this is another positive step, and I hope deputies will support it.
Thank you, Minister. Is the Deputy Funchion?
To come in on that, I think that's actually a really good move and a really significant step. I think it's I can't remember actually. I think maybe it was Deputy Batchik that brought it up at committee stage. But anyway, I think it was a really good suggestion, and I'm glad to see it in the legislation. And I suppose, for me, it just shows that there actually can be so much progress made. And I suppose it goes back to the point: is if we could just make progress on the one outstanding issue, for us it would be the difference of supporting the legislation or not. And I just think this is a really important thing to have in there, and I think it was actually really well thought out. And in fairness to the officials and yourself, Minister, I think it's really significant that it's in there. Thanks.
Look, I do want to come in here because Deputy Patrick used this term outlier in terms of this amendment, this legislation, and I think this legislation in no way makes us an outlier. We are an outlier now, and this legislation brings us into compliance with where Europe is in terms of the release of birth information, and puts us far in advance of a number of European countries. There are a number of European countries that had equally restrictive practices to the ones that we are casting to history now through the introduction of this legislation which will in every circumstance allow for the full release of information. So I just want to make that point. We are leaving our outlier status behind through this legislation, and I think that's a really positive step.
Yes,
that because I remember, as you said, I think it was coming near the end of the committee discussions, and I think everybody agreed 4 years was too long. Probably 1 year was too short on reflection. I think 2 years is a happy compromise, so I welcome that. Thanks.
Agreed. Agreed. 79 rises out of committee proceedings. 79 to 85 inclusive are related and will be taken together. Minister, to move 79 and to address the group.
Thank you, Councillor. I move 79. So look, these are just again a number of technical amendments, but they're related to the schedule, and the schedule, as we know, lists certain institutions, and the way in which they were formatted had caused a certain amount of confusion in terms of spacing and commas. But for the point of clarity, we're just bringing forward a set of amendments to ensure that those institutions that are listed there are properly described and individualised.
Minister.